Greetings one, greetings all. Thought I'd start a YouTube channel just to chronicle and document some of the activities I do and projects that I do. I have a lot of different interests, a lot of hobbies. I'm a big sportsman. I love hunting and fishing and camping and whatnot, but one of my other hobbies is to be out here in my shop fabricating and creating things. I'm not a rich guy, so when I want something, I can't just go out and buy it. I have to pretty much make it. So I wanted a bass boat. So I could afford a $500 beat up junk bass boat. So I bought it, and I took 3 years and I restored it for very little expense because I did most of the work myself, and now I have a boat that looks like it's $15,000 bass boat. That's how I roll. If I can make it, not only do I get enjoyment from making it, but I also get enjoyment from using it, and I save myself boatloads of money. So there's been many projects. I'm in my 50s, so there's been many projects throughout my life that I've undertaken that I don't have any sort of record of or anything outside of just some photographs or whatever. So I thought with YouTube, it'd be kind of neat to chronicle some projects or some builds that I do in case somebody else out there is thinking about undertaking the same thing, and maybe they can see how I do it, see how I succeed, see how I fail, and they can learn from it, and maybe that project will go better for them. My latest project right now is creating reliable, easy to use, lightweight transportation in the winter. Most of you are thinking, well, hey idiot, just get a snowmobile. I've been down that road. Back in the day, I had a snowmobile, and it was nothing but misery. The damn things are so heavy that if you get them stuck, you pretty much need a helicopter to get them out of there. Since I do a lot of ice fishing, and I'm in northern Wisconsin, most of the lakes up here experience a lot of slush in the wintertime, and snowmobiles have a tendency to get stuck in that slush. And once they get stuck in the slush, they're locked in. And there was many times where the only way I could get my snowmobile out of the slush was to literally roll it sideways, end over end, until I got to some good solid snow and I could drive it out. Exhausting. At my age, I'm not doing that. I'll have a heart attack for sure. So I'm looking around for better options. I mean, I don't like to walk, you know. Why should I walk a mile across the lake just to go ice fishing? By the time you get there, you're all exhausted and sweaty and miserable, and then you get cold, and it's just, it's bull crap. Besides, exercise? Come on. Do we really need exercise? So, I mean, I do enough walking for work. That's how I'll justify this. So anyway, so what do? Here it is. It's winter right now. We're in February. And I've ice fished twice. And that's because every time I try to go out ice fishing, I have snow up to my knees and slush, and I'm not walking out there and dragging all my equipment. And as it always turns out to be, the best spot to fish is on the other side of the lake. So, so I finally broke down, got desperate, and I bought a snowmobile. Because right now, you can find snowmobiles pretty reasonable. I picked up a 92, 93 Arctic Cat Mountain Cat 550 electronic fuel injected snowmobile for $600 and it came with a trailer. It's a good deal. I can afford it. Well, turns out it wasn't such a good deal. Bought the sled. It started and ran when I bought it. Left it sit in my driveway for 2 weeks, and now it won't start. So I'm not going to fault the seller because it ran for him. It ran when he showed up to sell it to me. I told him, I said, I want to start it cold, so don't fire it up in your shop and have it all warmed up and then, So he did what he did. So I got some sort of issue with that. And of course, electronic fuel injection, it's real complex. It's got a computer, it's got the injectors, it's got a fuel pump in the gas tank, it's got all kinds of sensors and crap on it. And then I got to thinking, once I got it home here and I tried to wrestle it around in the yard, drag it off the sled, doesn't have reverse, drag it off the trailer, try to drag it into the shop, had to hook the overhead hoist up just to pull it into the shop to work on it. I'm just like, what did I do? Here, I got impatient. Here I am again, dinking around with a 800-pound hunk of metal that's just going to do nothing but let me down and get me stuck. So, my friend, my best friend, he 1 week after I get impatient, pull the trigger on the snowmobile and buy it, he sends me a video and he says, have you ever heard of a snow dog? I've heard of them. I think I might have actually seen one once at a customer's house that I was working at. But I didn't give it a second thought. I thought, that's kind of ridiculous, you know, that's just, you know, nah. What a snow dog is basically a motorized dog sled team, okay? So what you have is there's manufacturers that make them. These things are really popular in Russia and Poland where they get a lot of snow and they have a lot of remote areas and stuff like that. So that's where most of these things originate from. Well, one of the manufacturers that makes these is called Snow Dog, spelled just like it sounds. They've actually gotten into the U.S. market and they're selling them in the U.S. So what's really cool is YouTube. So you can search YouTube, type in Snow Dog, and just watch the videos. There's one particular poster on YouTube that actually does like a Consumer Reports product review of this machine, right? So he buys one and he puts it through its paces. And those series of videos that this guy made was invaluable, all right? Because I had all kinds of preconceived notions that this thing would fail, big time. My number one concern was you get in deep snow and it's going to get stuck. And if it gets stuck, the only way you're going to get it out of there is to get a helicopter to fly in with a winch and pick it up out of the snowbank and take it. So I was like, you know, that was part of the reason that I wasn't really turned on by him. Well, this particular gentleman did us all a favor, all of us skeptics a favor, and he posted a series of videos on how this thing works, showed it in action, you know, driving around on a lake in deep snow, but then he even went one step further and he intentionally got it stuck. So he drives on, I don't know if you're familiar with snow on lakes, but when the wind blows, it blows all the snow to one side of the lake, and on that side of the lake, you're just going to get a nasty big snow berm, right? So this snow berm was waist high on a man, all right? So we're looking at 3.5 feet of snow, if not 4 in some spots. This guy intentionally drives this machine into that snowbank and gets it stuck. I mean, he buried it so far down that you couldn't see the top of the machine. I'm like, yeah, okay, here we go. You're done. You know, let's wait for the helicopter. You know, he got that thing out. And all he had to do, well, first, let me describe what a snow dog is. Basically, a snow dog is the tunnel section of a snowmobile. So take a saw, take a snowmobile, cut everything off. The tunnel is the portion where you sit on the seat and the track is rotating underneath you and you got the sideboards that you put your feet on. That's the tunnel, all right? Everything in front of that is the pan where the motor is, the suspension, all the connecting rods and everything for your steering, your engine sits in that front pan portion. That's all up in the front of the sled. That's where the wide part of the sled, where the hood is and everything like that. So take a saw, go right where that tunnel ends, and whoop, cut it off. Okay? So now you're left with the tunnel and the track and the drive cogs and everything that drive the track and the gear assembly and whatnot. Well, then what you do is you take a small engine and you mount it on top of the tunnel, and you buy a clutch assembly like you would use in a go-kart or in a, go-kart, I guess. You know, so you got a primary clutch and you have a secondary clutch. And then that secondary clutch connects to the shaft that runs the drive chains on the snowmobile that go down to the track and turn the track. So you end up with a motorized track. All right, so these devices are sometimes called track sleds. If you type that into YouTube, you'll get some videos that come up for track sleds. Snow Dog is a brand name. Okay, that's a trademark registered brand name. But people just typically call them Snow Dogs, just like, I don't know why. So anyway, to make a long story short, even though I have a habit of making short stories long, that guy buried it in 3 feet of snow, and how he got out of it. So you got your tunnel, okay, where your track is with your small engine on it, and then behind that tunnel is a hitch, and then there's a long set of handlebars, okay, just like a dog sled would have, kind of, sort of, and you stand in a toboggan, in a plastic sled, or you could stand on skis, or you could make a little toboggan with skis that you sit on, whatever. You're behind the machine, and the machine pulls you and your gear, okay? Genius, right? So a motorized dog team is basically what it is. So this guy buries it, and I'm like, yeah, you ain't getting out of there. And what does he do? He steps out of the toboggan, grabs the throttle, pushes down on the handle, and it crawled right up. I was like, all right. So then he goes and buries it again, okay? This time, that didn't work, stepping out of the toboggan. Well, actually, I think he stayed in the toboggan and he tried to get out, and there was no going anywhere. So, then he did step out, and he tried to get it out, and that didn't work either, all right? So he's really in there, all right? He's in, the snow is up to over his waist. So he walks to the front of the machine, starts stomping down the snow and walking backwards like this. And when he got about 4 feet away from the sled, he just fell on his back in the snow, right? Then he goes back to the machine, gets in the toboggan, and drives it right out. So what he did was he essentially made a ramp, all right? The snow was packed down where he was stomping. Now the machine had something to grab, and it just climbed right out on top of the snow, and away he went. I was like, that's all I need to see. That's it. If you can bury it in that and get it out without hardly having to bust your balls, I'm sold. So, price. $4,200 for one of these things. You know, I'm like, oh, too rich for my blood. But I can weld, I can fabricate, I know engines, I'll build one. So there's lots of videos, so I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a few videos out there on YouTube of guys that have built these things. And I studied them, of course, to kind of see how is it built, how does a clutch work, and how do you get your power from your clutch down to your track, and all this other stuff. Sure, stuff will come to me, to come to my head automatically, but you still want to get a little bit of information, and it always helps to have YouTube there so that somebody else who's done it, you can kind of get an idea and bounce off that idea. And you can modify it and improve it however you want. Do it more complicated, do it less complicated, whatever. So I watched some videos, and pretty much everything I saw I didn't like. Guys were using newer sleds that have suspensions. So your track assembly, is like this high, and that puts the tunnel, when you take the weight off the front of that puts the tunnel at a forward rake, and it just all kinds of different things that I didn't like. So and newer sleds have slides. Okay, so those slides have to. The slide is for those of you that don't know, it's a piece of plastic that goes between the bottom of the suspension assembly that has all the idler wheels and everything on it, and the track. It's sandwiched. The slide goes in between there. Okay, actually like this. Okay, all right, that's the slide. Okay, and then the track is moving underneath it, right? Well, there's friction there, so if you don't keep that lubricated, the slides can get very hot to the point of melting, and then when you stop the machine, the melted plastic glues itself to the track, and then you got to use a pry bar to pop your track free from your slides. I'm like, well, what happens late ice or early ice if I want to drive all the way across a 1,000-acre lake and I have no snow to keep the tracks lubricated? Well, they have these little devices, they're called scratchers or whatever, and you put on there and it's supposed to drag on the ice and kick up shavings and stuff like that. I'm just like, wow. The old sleds back in the 60s and 70s used bogey wheels, okay? These are a little tight. This is 1972. I gotta lubricate them a little bit. But anyway, the track rolls on this, right? No friction, no rolling resistance, no nothing. So, I'm building my snow dog or track sled out of an old 60s, 70s era vintage snowmobile. You can find them around. There's a big vintage snowmobile craze right now. People are buying them and restoring them and going on vintage rides and vintage clubs and stuff like that. So as little as 8 years ago, I would say, vintage sleds just ended up in the junkyard. Now there's a resurgence of vintage snowmobiling as a hobby. So now they're getting kind of more pricey to buy. So you really got to look around. But I found one. I shouldn't say I found it. My best friend Tim found one a mile away from his house. There was 3 old sleds sitting in the guy's woods. They've been in there for, well, I've been working on my job now 4.5 years. I've had service calls back in that area. I've seen those sleds since day one. And he said that the guy that owned them said they've been in there at least 10 years prior to that. So probably 15 years they've been sitting in this woods. So he was able to negotiate a deal with the guy. We picked up 3 sleds for $100, I think. And I got my sled for $50. So mine is the oldest of the lot. Mine is a 1974 Ski-Doo Olympic. Insert picture here. So anyway, we drag them out of the woods. We couldn't see them because they were buried in 3 feet of snow, so we couldn't really see them. So we jerked them out of the woods, got them out on the road, and looked them over. And out of all 3 of the sleds, the Olympic, the old Ski-Doo, seemed to be what I wanted exactly for this project. And so far, I've been right. It's exactly what I want for this project. So, I've got a bunch of shop video already in the can that I was posting on a Facebook page, but that wasn't reaching out to too many people on the build, so that's why part of the reason I'm starting the YouTube thing. But I've got a bunch of shop video already. I bought the machine this past Saturday, dragged it home Saturday morning, dragged it to the shop here, and by the end of the day, I had it all tore down and cut apart. So basically what I have left is the tunnel and all the corresponding components that I am going to use to build this thing. So yeah, I'll post all those videos that I've recorded this weekend on here so that you can kind of catch up to where I'm at. And then this is basically my introduction video. And then after all those videos play, then I can take over from here and we can continue with the build. So yeah, I'll sign off for now and catch you on the flip side.